Hello, my name is George Payton. I teach translation at Dallas International University. My wife and I began our career with Wycliffe, working in Kenya, where I was the director of the ORMA translation project, and we translated Genesis as the first book that we translated. From there, I moved into translation consulting, working in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. In addition to consulting, I was involved in training national translators, translation advisors, and consultants in training. For over the past 10 years, I've been involved in teaching at SAL schools here in the US, first at Biola University in the Los Angeles area. And for the last 3 years, I've been teaching translation courses here at DIU in the Applied Linguistics Department. In addition to teaching, I'm the program coordinator for the MA in Translation Advising, as well as the program coordinator for the Graduate Certificate in Translation Consulting. My topic that I'd like to speak about today is on translation quality related to section headings. Are section headings a quality issue? We'll be doing an exegetical study of the Toledot Formula in Genesis with special reference to its translation in Genesis in order to answer that question. Most translation projects translate section headings along with the biblical text, and section headings show us where the divisions are in the book, and they also help the reader to know what kind of information is in the following text. The problem is that not all Bible translations place the section headings in the same place. Also, the information varies from one Bible version to another. So how are translators supposed to know where to put the headings? And what information should they put in the headings? And is this even important? Does this even matter? This presentation will show that it is very important because it can affect the quality of a translation. So in this presentation, we will be examining a key phrase repeated throughout Genesis. And this phrase is, quote, "These are the generations of a person." And that's a quote from the King James Version. And most scholars agree that this phrase is used as a structuring device in Genesis. The word generations in Hebrew is the word Toledot, and this whole phrase is commonly referred to as the Toledot Formula. I will use the word Toledot and the expression Toledot Formula in this presentation. Understanding how the Toledot Formula is used will help us to know where the divisions are in Genesis, according to the Hebrew, and also where to place the section headings. And these are the different Toledot formula in Genesis. What is the issue at hand here? What is the problem? First of all, there is no consensus among Bible scholars or Bible versions on the meaning of Toledot or in the rendering of the Toledot formula. So here are some examples that illustrate the problem. In Hebrew, Ele Toledot Noah, literal English, these are the Toledot of Noah, and then we see generations, records, account, story, descendants, genealogy, and history as possible renderings for Toledot. How many senses does it have? It's very difficult to reduce it down to one overall meaning. And here's some evidence for that. So in the first 3 Toledot formulas in Genesis, we see that it could have at least 2 and possibly 3 different senses. And then if we look at other occurrences of the word throughout the Old Testament, you see that it could have potentially 3 other meanings. So which one is the true meaning of Toledot? What are the meanings of Toledot, and how many senses does it have? So this paper will investigate the following things. First of all, does the Toledot formula in Genesis refer to something in the previous section or something in the following section? In other words, does it look backwards or does it look forwards? Second of all, what does the these in the Toledot formula refer to? These what? And also then what entity does Toledot refer to? If we know which way it points, then that can help us to determine its meaning. Third, what are the meanings or senses of Toledot in its different contexts? So if we get these questions answered, that can help us to know what it means, how it should be translated, and where to put our section headings based upon the natural divisions, which are in the Hebrew in Genesis. Okay, so there are are mainly two interpretations of the Toledot and where it is placed in Genesis. One is that it's indicating a new section that functions at the beginning throughout Genesis, and it is suggested that if it occurs before a narrative, it should be rendered history or family history. If it occurs before a genealogy, it should be referred to as descendants, and that's the pattern that we followed when we translated Genesis. Later, I began reconsidering whether we had done it correctly. The second thing is, it is used as a summary and a new beginning. So in 2.4a, the first Toledot in Genesis, it is suggested that it functions as a summary of the creation account in 1.1 to 2.3. And possible suggested wordings are, these are the origins of the heavens and the earth, or this is the story of the heavens and the earth. And then 2.4b begins the new section. For the rest of the Toledot formula in Genesis, this interpretation sees them as beginnings for each one of those. Here is an example of the interpretation that it summarizes at the very first occasion. So we have in 2:3, he blessed the seventh day, set it apart as a special day, and then beginning in 2:4, and that is how the universe was created. So they see that as a summary, summarizing 1:1 to 2:3. Then a section heading is put in there. They divide the sentence, and then the next part of the sentence begins, when the Lord God made the universe, there were no plants on the earth. So that is one example of this interpretation. But both can't be correct. It can't be a summary and a new thing in the same verse. So which one of these interpretations has more evidence to support it? That is the question that we'll be answering today. So what is the evidence for the direction of these and the Toledot formula? So the Toledot formula is a verbless clause. These, Toledot, Noah. And at the beginning of that, we have the demonstrative pronoun ele in Hebrew, which means these. And ele in Hebrew can refer to something following or something preceding. And it is often used in other verbless clauses in Genesis. So if we look at those, then we can see some patterns emerge. And here is what we find. First of all, ele in a verbless clause begins lists of names. For example, these are the names of the sons of Ishmael. These are the sons of Reuel. These are the chiefs of the sons of Esau. Second usage is at the end of a list of names. For example, the sons of Shem are in 22. These are the sons of Shem in 10:31, summarizing who all the sons of Shem are. The same thing is found in Genesis 25 and in Genesis 36. So LA can only occur at the end of a list of names if there is a corresponding word at the beginning that relates to the same information. Otherwise, it never occurs at the end of a list. So, in beginning the list of names, end of the list of names with a parallel phrase at the beginning, it never occurs at the end of narratives. We never find LA in a verbless clause at the end summarizing the narrative. So the Toledot formula is also a verbless clause that we said, and it also starts with LA. And it is used like all the other verbless clauses in Genesis. It occurs at the beginning of lists, like in genealogies. It occurs at the beginning of narratives, but it never occurs at the end of lists or the end of narratives. Therefore, Toledot formula always begins a new section. So, what entity does it point to in the following text? We've determined that it looks forward to the following text. What is it pointing to? And in order to understand how Toledot is used and what it means, we have to look at all 39 occurrences of the Hebrew Bible, not just the ones in Genesis. So in Genesis, there are 13 Toledots, but there are 26 of them found in other books. So we have to look at all of them to get a complete picture of the usages and meanings of Toledot. And the word Toledot is a noun. It comes from the Hebrew verb holid, which means to father. So let's use as a working definition of Toledot, the fathered ones. So if we look at all of these different Hebrew words, Toledot, in the Old Testament, this shows us three things. One, genealogies. In genealogies, Toledot is followed by a list of people who have proceeded from a particular head of household. And those people represent the man's family, those who came after him. So if we collect all of those people together in a group, they represent the man's offspring, or another English word is his progeny. So in genealogies, the primary sense of Toledot is progeny. In other lists, in some lists in Numbers and Chronicles, Toledot points to a number of people who descended from heads of household who fit a particular criteria. So the purpose is to count the number of people rather than giving a list of names. For example, in chapter 1 of Numbers, for all the 12 tribes of Israel, it gives the same kind of formula. We'll use Simeon as an example. The Toledot of Simeon, of men who can go to war, their number was 59,300. Similar structure in in 1 Chronicles 7. The sons of Tola were mighty men of valor. According to the Toledot, their number was 22,600. And the sense in these contexts is numbered progeny. Similar to the first one, but the function is different in that it used to number rather than to name. So in addition to genealogies and other lists, what about narratives? The Toledot formula only appears at the beginning of narratives in Genesis in these different places and also in Numbers 3. And I'll deal with the Toledot formula in 2:4 in just a minute. In every case, Toledot points to the named ancestors' sons. For example, in Genesis 6, 9, and 10, these are the Toledot of Noah. Noah fathered 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. These are the Toledot of Moses and Aaron. These are the names of the sons of Aaron. So in this case, in narratives, the sense in these contexts is the immediate offspring. What about in Genesis 2:4? It is a narrative from chapter 2 to chapter 4. What is it pointing to? So if we look at all the 38 instances that we just examined, Toledot points to people or progeny or fathered ones. So there's a human element there. So we want to look at the one in 2:4 in light of all the others. So those 38 will inform how we understand number 39 in Genesis 2:4. So it is suggested Toledot in 2:4 also refers to people. Which people are involved? Adam and Eve, focused on chapter 1 and the subject of the narrative in chapter 2. But the problem is how to understand this phrase in Hebrew, the Toledot of the heavens and the earth. And this preposition of is problematic. So we know that Noah fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But the heavens and the earth did not father Adam and Eve in the same way. So what is this of functioning as? We also know that God did not father Adam and Eve. God did not procreate. God creates. So these people are his creation, not his children. And this word of in Hebrew can mean many things. You can have the sons of Jacob, his 12 sons. You can have the house of Jacob, the house that he lived in. It can also mean location or source. For example, the people of Jerusalem are the people who are located in Jerusalem or the people who came out of Jerusalem. So of can point to source or location. Now, which one of these 38 different interpretations of can it be? In this particular verse, it is location or source. So Toledot out of the heavens and the earth, or out from, or from within the heavens and the earth. And in Hebrew, They picture the heavens and the earth conceptually in your mind. You think of a picture of a big container. So God put the lights in the sky. God put the birds in the air. God put the fish in the sea. God put the people and the animals on the land. And in 2:7, where do we see that God gets the soil in order to make man? Out of the ground. He took the rib out of the man and made the woman. He put them into the garden, and then he drove them out of the garden. So this picture of heavens and earth as container helps us to understand the relationship between Toledot and the heavens and the earth. So in this sense, Toledot is the created ones who came out of the heavens and the earth. So the full verse reads, these are the Toledot of the heavens and the earth when they were created, when the Lord God made earth and heaven. Or stated in another way, based upon what we have just learned, these people are the created ones out from the heavens and the earth when they were created, when the Lord God made earth and heaven. And this phrasing here is called a chiastic structure or a chiasm, where similar words are repeated in the second part, taken from the first part, and sometimes in reverse order. And Hebrew uses this to highlight the important information that they want to convey in that particular text. So this is what the Hebrew construction or the Hebrew chiasm looks like in Genesis. So these people are the created ones out from heaven and earth when they were created, when the Lord God made earth and heaven. The first thing that I want to draw attention to is they were created and when the Lord God made. You notice that it doesn't say who created them, but we know that that is God. And so when they were created points to God. And then explicitly, it says when Lord God made. And so God is repeated twice right in the middle of this chiastic structure. We also get another repetition with the word created and the word made. And those are two words that are similar in meaning. They're also two words that are used throughout Genesis 1. God created and God made. Over and over, both of those are used. So we see created and made as another repetition. We also have heaven and earth, and in reverse order, earth and heaven. So that's connected, and that shows us the ends of the chiasm. Heaven and earth and heaven. And this is the only verse in the Old Testament, except for one, where earth and heaven is used. It's always, always, always heaven and earth, except here. So that stands out as unusual, and it draws the reader's attention to that. So heaven and earth and heaven. So in Hebrew, the focus of the chiasm, the most important information is in the middle of the chiasm. And what do we find in the middle? The Lord God made. He created them, the Lord God made. So God is the focus of the chiastic structure. Secondary focus is the main characters, i.e. the Toledot. And that is the created ones, Adam and Eve. So this beautiful literary device draws the reader's attention on God as the maker of everything. It focuses on God. It also focuses on people that he made. And so this chiasm is a way of hinting to the reader that the next part of chapter 2 will talk about God making man and woman. So in looking at those two interpretations of Toledot that we looked at previously, first of all, they mainly draw on the macro level issues without considering the macro level issues, looking at, oh, this is a narrative and this is a genealogy. If it's narrative, it should be this. If it's a genealogy, it should be that. But it ignores the small details that we just looked at. And a good interpretation should include both the big picture issues and the small details. Second of all, if we interpret Toledot as account or history or record, that requires us to change ele, these, to this. And that is a singular pronoun in English, but it's clearly a plural verb, a pronoun in Hebrew. Third, if you look at the word account or record or history, there doesn't seem to be any shared meaning with the verb to father. So we can't really see how that interpretation was derived at if they share no semantic content between the two. Fourthly, if we render 2a, 2.4a, and 2.4b as two separate sections, that breaks up the chiastic structure, this beautiful literary device. So we basically dismantle this literary piece that was put in the book of Genesis. Second of all, the focus on God is lost. And third, the focus on people is lost. So in separating them, the focus is on heaven and earth rather than God and people. And as we said, the chiastic structure was focusing on God and focusing on people because that is the main point of the following passage. What is the conclusion? If we put a section heading in places that contradict the divisions in Genesis according to the Hebrew Bible, this can lead to an inaccurate translation, thereby lowering its quality. Okay, so we have some recommendations for how to translate Toledot and the Toledot Formula. And these are just recommendations you can choose as you interpret the passage. First of all, start each Toledot passage as a new section in the text. If you're adding a section heading, be sure to put it at the beginning before every Toledot formula throughout the book of Genesis. Second of all, communicate the sense of Toledot as pointing to people or the fathered ones, except in Genesis 2:4, they're created ones. Let me use Swahili as an example. One way of rendering fathered ones in Swahili is wazawa, the born ones. Third, some languages like Swahili don't have a general pronoun for these, but they have classes or groups of nouns, and each group has a different word for the word these. Asian languages can be like that. Chinese, Korean, and others. Some languages have plurality where they have gender, they have masculine and feminine. So that may require a pronoun that connects with people. So the recommendation is use the pronoun in your language that connects with the people group. So in Swahili, the pronoun is hawa, these, for the people class. And sometimes you need to add a noun with that. And the noun that we would add in the Toledot formula would be people. So these people. So Swahili would be watu hawa, these people. The whole sentence would read watu hawa ni wazawa wa Nuhu. These people are the born ones of Noah. Fourthly, keep the chiastic structure in Genesis 2:4 together as a unit. And in doing so, we maintain the focus on God and the focus on people. Looking at the whole book of Genesis, there's a narrative line of people and events and sequences that happened throughout the book of Genesis. And it goes like this. So we have the Genesis creation in 1:1 to 2:3, and then the Toledot of the heavens and the earth, of Adam, of Noah, of Shem, of Terah, of Isaac, and of Jacob. And that forms a continuous, readable story all the way through Genesis. And this is a true story of God interacting with people. It also includes, off of that line, but it's still included in Genesis, other genealogies of those not on the main storyline. And if we were to summarize all of the book of Genesis, this is one suggested way of summarizing the information in Genesis. So the big story of Genesis reads, God has established a special relationship with people of a lineage he chooses while maintaining a less intimate relationship with the people not of that chosen line. Toledot forms the thread that connects all of those people of God's chosen people, while at the same time connecting the non-chosen to that. So I hope that this has been a helpful presentation to you. Thank you very much. Have a good day.